Hello, my cyber babies. It's the even more fabulous Dr. Mother Love coming to you live and in living color. Well, as opposed to coming to you dead and in black and white. And I know I say some crazy stuff, and you have heard me say this many, many times that I am an ordinary person leading an extraordinary life. And I meet so many people like that, and I was like, but that's what we're supposed to do. Okay, so then we roll up on my guest today. This is Mr. Greg Leeson, and he has spent the last thing. He is one of those people who understands that sometimes life doesn't work out as it's planned. That's a statement that most of us can identify with. And our country is full of ordinary people who have led and continue to lead or extraordinary lives. And Greg decided to write a book about it. He spent 13 months traveling around the United States, interviewing 71 strangers who would share their story with him. 66 of them, five asked not to be included. You know, I want to know the T on that one. And are in ordinary people, extraordinary lives, a path to reconciliation in our divided time. What a timely topic and what a timely conversation. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So now tell me how, first of all, let's find out about Greg. I always want to know the meat of the person, the foundation. Where'd you grow up? What were you thinking when you were like 11 years old? I go in,
Yeah.
those guys say, I don't remember, I can't remember past when I was before 10 or 11. What do you remember? What was your life like when you were 10, 11 years old?
So, okay. So I grew up in Nova Scotia, up in Canada. And I immigrated to the United States in 1980. So I'll get to that. And I was born into a very, very, very stable family. My father was a telephone engineer. My mother was a stay-home mom. Two older sisters, younger brother. And so very stable. My dad started working at the telephone company as a young man. He retired from the telephone company, right? So it's one of those environments. However, there was not a lot of love, as you would say. There's not a lot of closeness and hugging and so forth in the family. My father was very British. His mother died when he was a kid, and his father was very strict. He and his two brothers were able to do were read books, read, and all three of them went off to university, including some of the best universities in the world, McGill and Montreal. And so I had this very stable upbringing, but not a lot of involvement. And I was always kind of a straight arrow. So I did well in school, very active in sports as a kid. So there wasn't a whole lot of reason to be worried about me, and they didn't. Um, and so that's kind of what my life was like growing up. Very, very sports oriented. Not a big guy, but I was very involved in sports. I was best sport was distance running. I even had dreams of the Olympics. I was actually quite that good in 1,500 meters until I made a big mistake in my life and quit. Won my last race, walked off the track, and never competed again. One of those mistakes you make and you can never get back.
So that's a
Um,
learning lesson.
yeah. So that was childhood. Involved with
What
sport.
was the lesson that you learned from when you said, I quit, I'm never going back?
Oh yeah, very good question. Yes. So I consider it the biggest mistake in my life. And what I learned and I pass along to my daughter is this. Uh, the only true failure in life is when you quit.
When you quit,
It's the only true failure. Other things are setbacks. You may not achieve your objectives, but you can always learn from them. But when you quit, that's a failure. And that's what I learned from that one.
see, that's why I wanted to know because and you got the lesson. A lot of people don't get that lesson.
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah.
stop blame everybody and everything else except take responsibility for the decisions that they've made. It's my
Yes.
fault. My father was too strict. I was this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
do you step into the responsibility of saying, okay, I own up to this? And you did
I
it at
own it.
a game.
Well, that led to something very interesting that you mentioned it. So I learned from my wife, my ex-wife now, although we have a very good relationship. I learned from my wife what it means to hug and so forth, all those types of things, right? I learned that from her. And when I moved from Canada to Illinois in the 1980s to trade in the futures, Chicago Board of Trade. I was an investment banker in Canada and decided, one day I'm going to hop on a plane, go to Chicago. Never been here my entire life and trade commodities. Well, I met my wife asking for directions on Michigan Avenue. Um, yeah, met her asking for directions, and we built a relationship long term. And after I lost everything, which I did,
But
we got we
commodity.
got married. We were living together. We got married, but it's one of those things and so forth. But what I learned from her was something incredibly valuable. When I was probably about 30, I guess, early 30s, so I'd been in the United States maybe 5 years and that, 6 years. My father had a bypass operation, and he was really struggling in his recovery. And it was one of those things you just never know, right? So I flew back one day and went to the hospital, and there I was in the room with him. And it was kind of a shared room, so there was a curtain and so forth, but it was just me and dad.
Mm.
And I knew I had to say it, even though I never heard it once in my entire life ever. I told my father that I loved him. And in 2018, many years after that, I got together with my three siblings and I asked them a question that had been on my mind for a long time. I said, did you ever look at your parents ever in the eye and as an adult say, I love you? Well, not one of them did, but I did. And I told my mother many times after I got past that hurdle, but I actually did tell my father that. So that you talk about that lesson you learn and so forth. You learn from everybody you can, of course. And I learned that from my ex-wife, my wife at the time.
That's
And yeah.
and that's so important. And all of us are looking for at growing up, and we have these role models in our parents and
Hmm.
our elders, and we want to please them, and we all
Yeah.
are looking for that parental validation.
Oh, absolutely.
See, do you see me,
Yeah.
Mama? Do you see me, Dad? Uh, and I understand about what you're saying, growing up in a strict household like that.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I came from a large family. I'm the second of six children. My mother was
Okay.
a widower. She was a widow at 30 with six kids. And I was like, it's a
Yeah.
good thing she pretty because you got to be crazy to do this. And her mantra was read, read,
Yeah.
read, learn, 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 study, study,
Yeah.
study, so that you
Yeah.
become a viable, productive member of society. And you
Yeah.
had said something earlier. You said that you were the one that they didn't worry about. And that
Basically.
and you must be a middle child.
I am. Well, I'm third, I guess. Third or four.
That's middle. That's in the
Yeah.
middle. You're not number
Yeah.
one, not the baby.
Yeah.
So there's some
Yeah.
stuff
That's right. Yeah.
there. And all I wanted to do, because I wasn't the oldest, I wasn't the first daughter, I wasn't the baby girl. I was like, and everybody had a title but me. Oh, this is my oldest daughter. It is my oldest son. It is my baby son. These are my two babies. Oh yeah, that's her.
Oh, and then you.
And second in line, and I get the last accolade. And so I get where you want to be motivated to be able to say that. And when you said
Yeah.
it brought something, when you said that as an adult,
Yeah. Yeah.
you never heard that from them, and you
I never did.
said,
Yeah.
"Dad, I love you." And
Yeah.
how did that help with his recovery?
Yeah. But the most remarkable thing is when I told my siblings in 2018 what his reaction was. They thought I was from the planet Mars. My stoic, unbelievably stoic Englishman father started to cry. You see,
Not so
when
stoic. Not so
he,
stoic when you hit to the heart. And
no,
sometimes do you think
yeah,
maybe he was doing that to protect himself, to protect
yeah,
his feelings, and
yeah,
not to put that on his children? And so I'll put
yeah,
up like this, and I'll be the steadfast dad,
yeah,
and you'll learn.
yep.
And when you saw him, when you looked down and got all excited and snatched my earphone out my earphone, took out my ear. What went through your head when you saw your father show emotions to you like that?
Oh, you know what it was? So he never said the words "I love you." He never did ever. But I realized at that moment in time, oh, everybody has their limitations as to what they can and cannot do, and it allowed me to see him as a human being. You know what I mean? Here I am 30, and I'm finally seeing my father as a human being because of this one interaction. It's something my three siblings never got a chance to experience. I feel very blessed that I did have that experience, though, with my dad.
but they can live vicariously through you because they know that you saw that. They know that
Yeah.
you felt that from you. And you really, you just never know. I mean, you got yours at 30. I didn't get mine till I was 35 years old. And I had
Wow.
given up on,
Yeah.
looking for that expectation. I just had to keep, doing what I knew
Yeah.
to do and the great things that I learned from her and my other elders. And then you just got to push forward, take the good things that they taught you, the good work ethic, the good stick to
Yep.
ethic. How are you going to be with other people? And when you have children, will you not be that, that closed off like this? Will you
Yeah.
be willing to open up? And
Yeah.
when you got were able to adopt your daughter, what
Yeah.
what was the thing in your head that said, I'm not gonna be like that guy? What
Oh, yeah. I was I was very independent minded kid. I always was growing up and so forth. And um, so I always, I mean, I knew I was great from my family, very responsible. I mean, I tell people I learned three things: responsibility, responsibility, and you can probably guess what the third thing is. Um, yeah. I mean, they were very responsible people, just not a lot of love and affection. And so I brought that, hopefully, I brought that into my family life. And, but my daughter and I love you all the time. I love you. I love you. I love you. Hug and so forth. I mean, it's just the way it is. Yeah, but of course, I never became a father until I was about 2 months shy of my 45th birthday. Thought it was not ever going to happen, you know. And I'd actually given up on it on my 39th birthday. I gave up on it, and then this miracle happens, you know, because my wife says, Greg, I think we can go to China and adopt." And I said, "Okay, I'm listening." This is after I'd given up, right?
uh, uh,
Yeah,
girl,
and
I'm
so
listening to you. I'm listening to you.
so
Just when
when
you
you
give up and you think
yeah
you can't do it, the universe
yeah
will open up and conspire for your success. And you're like, no, I don't want to do it. Okay, I'm done.
oh no
I got you.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
was all ears and February 25th 2002 this little child was placed in my arms in Guangzhou, China, and I just completely lost it.
That was it. That
Yep,
and
yep, yep,
when you see them, you know. You really know. And then
yep.
you realize what your true assignment is. And I'm sure you've
Oh
heard,
yeah,
you want
yeah.
to hear God laugh? Tell him your plan. And you
Yep, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. I've heard that one before.
and then you go,
Yeah,
oh, well, I was, wait a minute, but see, you don't understand. Just go do what I told you to do, son. And just do this. And look at the light that it brought into your life. The
yeah,
openness, the just being connected with emotion and being connected with the vulnerability of to be able to open up and say, this is how I am, this is how I feel. And it's all right. So I was so glad when men got over that whole stupid stuff about growing up. Men don't cry, boys don't cry. Buck it up, put your big boy print. I'm like, well, that's why you holding all of this stuff in.
yeah,
And then and one day, it's gonna come out some kind of way. You might have control over it, you might not, and oftentimes you don't. And you just have to go with it. But you got to be open to the universe and to be willing to open up to other people. Because I mean, I
yeah.
don't know how many people met their future wife asking for directions. But that's a great story. You got to
Yeah.
give me a little bit more
On,
about
on Michigan Avenue, no less.
oh, Michigan. Okay, tell people about Michigan Avenue so they'll get the insight what we're talking about, joking about.
Yep, yep, yep. No, you're right. And but you know, the greatest thing I ever done in my life was, I had a plan, by the way, when I was a young man. Let me tell you, I had a plan. But the greatest thing I ever did in my life, and nothing even comes close, it really is adopting my daughter. Yeah,
And
really.
you can't beat that. You
Yeah,
cannot
can't beat it.
beat that. You can't beat that with a stick. And they all sometimes they turn out like you want to. Sometimes they
Yeah,
don't. Sometimes they turn out better than you even thought.
yeah.
And you go, really? That's my child?
Where'd that come from?
Wait, that came from me. And then they'll go, yeah, I learned that from you. I was like, really? And then you gotta pay attention because they're paying attention.
Yeah.
Now let's get to this book. And
Okie dokie.
decide that you yourself were an ordinary person leading an extraordinary life, and that other people's stories needed to be told and needed to be
Yeah. Well, so let me tell you something that happened in grade four. Because in grade four, one of the most important years of my life in a lot of ways, I stopped reading fiction. I stopped reading fiction in grade four, other than what the schools made me read. Between the ages of probably 10 and like 18, I probably read more biographies than most people will ever read in a lifetime. That's all I did. Now, every single one of them were either athletes or coaches, right? And great. I call them my mentors because I learned so much about you know I Am Third, Gail Sayers. It's Good to Be Alive, Roy Campanella. Go on My Life on Ice, Roger Gilbert. I mean, I read all these stories.
My God.
Uh, uh, oh yeah, The Wizard of Westwood, John Wooden. Read his. I mean, I read so many, and they were great teachers. So I had an interest in people's lives as far as back as grade four. Um, in 2015, I was the master of ceremonies at my 40th high school reunion. Okay, you know how old I am now. Um, yeah, yeah.
Don't tell her.
Hey, but I'm still there. Uh, so at the reunion, there were about 85 of us that night, and I'm thinking, talk to as many people as you can tonight, Greg, because this is going to be a one night. It was a one night event that time, and I start hearing some of these great stories about what some of these people did with their lives, and where they branched out and moved away or whatever. And I thought, I wonder if anybody's ever written a book about just ordinary people and their lives. Well, it turns out there've been a few. Studs Terkel and Travels with Charlie wrote an interesting book where he traveled around the United States and just talked to ordinary people. It became a bestseller. Uh, uh, oh geez, Stanton, Humans of New York, and his great book. So there've been a few who wrote about just ordinary people, and I thought, yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I'm a math guy, math, physics, that kind of stuff. That's who I am. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And then in 2019, I was on a date with this woman, and we were talking, and I was talking about myself a little bit, and she stopped me and said, Greg, have you ever considered writing a book? And I thought, well, no one's ever asked me that one before. I said, well, I have one book in me, but it's not about me. It's about everyone else. And I kind of told her the idea, and she said, do it. So that Monday back at work, I pulled a guy aside, a good friend of mine. I said, hey, listen, I got this crazy idea. Tell me what you think of it. So this is during the summertime. We were just out for a walk from the campus where we worked at Pfizer. And I told him, he said, Greg, that's a great idea. And the next thing I know, this fellow, tall Indian fellow from PhD in chemistry, went to University of Buffalo, was telling me his life story and how he did not plan to come to the United States. It just one thing after another. It's just a series of events. And he found himself at University of Buffalo working on his PhD, met his wife there, yada, 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 right? And so it was quite an amazing story. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then COVID set in. I actually got one interview in before COVID did. I interviewed a gentleman who was in the Battle of the Bulge, believe it or not. Oh, yeah, a true war hero.
What was he, 148 years old, and he's still here
He
telling his story?
Well, he was 90, I think, when I interviewed him in 2019, right? But he was a Battle of the Bulge guy and so forth. Amazing. And then, of course, COVID set in. I was working at home for 19 months by myself. My daughter was off to university and so forth. So had a lot to think about, did a lot of reading. And I decided, I read this book by Bruce Feiler, Life is in the Transitions. And Bruce traveled all 50 states. You're familiar with the book?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I'd read that book. He traveled all 50 states, interviewed 225 people, and wrote this great self-help book. And it was from personal experience, by the way, that made him want to do this book. And so I stole from Bruce the idea of travel. And in his book, he wrote about a professor at Northwestern University, about 25 miles from where I live, guy by the name of McAdams. And McAdams, Harvard PhD, and his whole thing is the narrative. What is your narrative? And so forth. And he's written several books, including The Stories We Live By. So, of course, I went and bought that book, The Stories We Live By. And at McAdams's book, he has this 22 question protocol basically that he and his graduate students have been using for decades. And he says, here it is, use it. I said, okay. So I stole the idea of,
You
I,
permission to steal
yeah,
from me. But
I
that's
had,
Greg is
I, I, I've since met Dan McAdams, and he actually has agreed to allow me to publish his protocol in Appendix A of my book,
how about that? See,
which is pretty amazing.
that's
And I call it the true gem of the book, in my opinion, is that protocol. But so as I say, I stole the idea of travel from Bruce Fielder, and I stole the protocol from Dan
Dan
McAdams.
McAdams.
So,
So,
but it
but it
worked out
worked out
really
really
well.
well.
so.
And then
And
I
then I
went on
went on
4
4
road
road
trips.
trips.
So how did you select the people that you were going to showcase in your book?
I
I
get asked that question all the time. One word: serendipity.
Uh,
Uh, I met people on the streets. I gave a lot of speeches on the road, most of the Rotary clubs actually, and I stayed at Airbnb everywhere. And so I was on the road for basically 278 nights out of 13 months, 4 road trips, 53 cities, 39 states, and 8 Canadian provinces as well. Uh, and I met people however I could. Say, giving speeches, my Airbnb hosts. I interviewed a handful of them. People referred me to a few people. I met people literally in the streets and so forth. Um, I went out to public places and hung up a sign and then said, "I'm ready to book. Would you like to talk to me?" That kind of thing, right? However, I could meet people.
and you never know where you're going to meet them. And the
Yeah,
fact that they have always been willing to open up to you.
yeah,
I said earlier, when when you step into your purpose, the universe will open up and conspire for your success wherever you are on the street corner. I mean, and I've been in the trenches with people. I mean,
yeah,
I sat on the curb with the winos, eating white bread and bologna sandwiches, and listening to their stories and understand. I'm a storyteller, like you're a storyteller, and
yeah, yeah,
listen to the stories. And I mean, out of these people, how many? Because there was a number in here that said that some of them didn't want to be mentioned in your book, but they were willing to share the story. How did
Well,
that work out?
yeah. So I interviewed 71 people altogether. 5 people I wrote their story, and they declined to have it published in the book. And by story, I'm talking mini, mini, mini biography. Okay, it's about 550 words where I tried to capture some essence from each person. Right.
Yes.
For some, it was achievement. For some, it was overcoming,
Mhm.
and so forth. So I try to capture something and expound on that as best I can. But 5 people, decline. And that's fine, not a problem. But
Right.
I thought 66 out of 71 wasn't too bad.
I think that's pretty darn good, sir. That's pretty
Yeah,
darn good to have
yeah,
that
yeah,
foundation. So, what were some of the stories that most fascinated with you?
yeah,
Putting this down because then 71 people working
yeah, yeah,
their essence down into something palatable that other people will want to pick up and read and and find out about their lives and even see
yeah,
some of their life in these people that you've talked to, that you've interviewed, that you really communed with.
yeah.
So what were some of the stories that kind of like blew you away?
Yeah, I've got a few for you. Just one last thing. So when I interview people, Dan McAdams in his book, let's say he has people interviewed all the time at Northwestern. He wrote 2 amazing things. One, he wrote, when people are done with the interview, whether it's with him or his graduate students, they will say to Northwestern, "Keep your money. I don't want your money." The second thing he wrote, because it was so cathartic, the second thing he wrote, it was, there would be tears in the telling.
Uh, well,
And
see,
I thought, of the 71 people I interviewed, again, most of them perfect strangers. I interviewed a couple of people I knew. 30 people started crying during the interview.
because
That's how deep McAdams' protocol is.
you hit, you guys hit on many nerves that people that
Yeah,
are afraid, that
yeah,
are
yeah,
afraid of letting
yeah,
everybody know that their nerves are afraid, that they feel
yeah,
overwhelmed. And one of the things that what you do is you meet them where they are.
yeah, right, right.
You're not trying to, let me hear your story. Let me hear what, and then by the time when you get through it, you just never
Yeah,
know. I remember I was doing this live television show, This was many years ago, and I was just blown away by this woman. And so I'm the announcer on the show, and I'm doing my mother love thing. Hello,
Yeah, yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
welcome to the program. So and so and such and such and that. And so during the commercial break, my husband, because he always goes with me, I told you I had to be in a controlled environment. And he was there, and I asked him to get something for me. I don't even remember what the something was that I asked him to get. And I said, honey, would you get me so and so and such and such, please? He said, sure. He comes back with it, and I said, thank you very much. And he goes, you're welcome. And a lady pulled on my dress tail that was sitting up at the top of the stage, and she said, Mother Love, you and your husband are so polite to each other. And I went, I didn't know what the heck to do with that. I mean, if I'm not going to be polite to anybody, I'm going to be polite to my husband.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do with that. And I said, what do you mean? She said, my husband, we've been married 40 something years, and he has never once said please or thank you to me. And me and my llama, I'm like, you need to bring him over here to some other love.
Yeah, right.
If something wrong with him or something is not right with you, that you would
Mm,
tolerate that. And that's what it is. And people will only do what you allow them to do to you.
yeah,
You stand up and say, no, this is it. I got a line, don't cross it. That's it. And most people just want to keep pleasing one another and forget to please themselves,
yeah,
forget that they deserve happiness. And so, what did that do for
yeah,
you? Coming out and listening to the peoples and their stories. And I was asking, what were some of the,
yeah.
that that was just whoa. Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, so let me give you a few stories here. So I'm going to tell you about Joanne. So Joanne, this is a bit of a humor story. Okay, Joanne, it's a love story from New York. I interviewed her in Palm Springs. She was, I think, 88 at the time, and just lost her husband of like 60 some odd years. Um, and Joanne was telling me this story. So her husband was a successful sales executive in New York City, and she was a former model. Okay. Uh, and a entrepreneur in the travel business. So they travel all over the world, of course, right? So this one time they were in Jordan, and the sheikh looks at Joanne, takes a bit of a shine to her,
Mm.
and offers get this, not one but two camels for her. I mean, that's a great deal, right?
I, I don't know from camel trading. I don't know.
And anyway,
You're the first person that ever told me about travel, about camel trading. Okay, so
well,
they
so
want to give
so
her
so
camels.
and so, of course, with levity, of course, I wrote this after serious consideration. Paul, it might have been Paul, I'm not sure, decided to turn down the offer because what the heck was he going to do with two camels in New York City?
Wait, he offered her husband two camels. Of
Of
course,
course,
he was the husband is standing right there, and
yeah, yeah,
I give you two camels for the woman.
of course.
I, see,
And so that was one of the story I like to tell to get people laughing and so forth.
okay, wait, I'm just trying to get the two camels. And this is the part that got me. The husband responded, well, what I'm going to do with two camels in New York. Give me something else I can use in New York, and maybe you can have at it with the wife.
actually, that statement was probably my license. I
Okay.
probably
That's
yeah, I did a little
still
bit.
it's still
But anyway,
that is still
but it was a wonderful love story, and she's a wonderful woman.
that's
Um,
thank you,
so
man.
another another story. This is interesting. So this was the second person that I did not ever never met in my entire life that I interviewed. It was I left. So I lived in the Chicago area, and I had these four journeys, right? And so in the first place I did is I went up to Canada, down the east coast of the United States, and so forth. So I was in London, Ontario, where actually I went to university, and I met Raja. Now Raja is a son of an immigrant family, very successful in real estate, but he and his father never really kind of saw eye to eye. And of course, he followed in his father's footsteps and was doing very well as a young man, had six-figure bank account in his 20s and so on and so forth. And at age 30, not getting something, he just walked away. He walked away from all the money he could have ever had in the future. Never went back to work, really. Lived off of what he had. And he's got a girlfriend. They travel all over the United States and Canada cleaning parks. That's what he does. He cleans parks. So he lives a bit of a subsistent life, but he walked away from such a huge amount of money. And I interviewed him May of 22. That winter, just before the American Thanksgiving, I get an email from him. Hey, Greg, do you still have the audio of my interview with that we did? I said, yes, of course I do. Said, can I get those files? And I'm wondering, I wonder why he wants these now. And I learned after that his father took his own life, and Raja never um, came to agreement with his father and things. They never made up, if you will. And I think about that, and I think, well, we can always learn from each other, right? And the lesson here for all of us is, and I tell this when I give a speech, is if you have something in your life that you have not said, say it, because you never know when you're not going to get that chance again.
And that is such
You
a
know,
heavy weight
and
on people. And I've seen that
yeah,
weight really crush and destroy people, destroy their
yeah,
psyche, and they stand in this guilt pool for such a
yeah, yeah,
time. They can hold
yeah,
such a grudge, and it just grinds off your own life. It's like,
yeah,
trying to, sculpt or something out of it, when all you got are your fingers and you don't have the right tools. And then if you open up to somebody,
yeah,
they feel frightened, or they feel
yeah,
threatened, or they feel like, well, why do you want to know this about me? And that's why you go, well, why not about you? How
yeah,
come it can't be you? Tell me about your extraordinary life. And then when you listen
yeah.
to them, you're like, wow, really? You know,
Oh yeah,
and that's such a beautiful thing. So okay,
yeah.
you decided.
So
I told you, write the book. Write the book. Come on, Greg. Write the
wait,
book.
so I got one of the story. So people ask me, "What's your favorite story?" And of course, the correct answer is, I do not have a favorite story. Right? I'm not allowed. But if I had to pick one, it would be the youngest person I interviewed. He's 29, Manchester, New Hampshire. My Airbnb host who lives way out in the sticks in the woods, I mean the woods of the woods, but he got a nice place, but he can't see any of his neighbors' homes because all trees and so forth on a dirt road. And I'm wondering, what did I get myself into?
Uh,
And
what if
I knew this guy.
what if I scream and somebody go hear me out here? I know that.
Anyway, and this guy, big burly guy, black beard, and so forth, heavy machinery operator, blue collar guy, right? And so I start to interview him, and I make an incredible mistake. I prejudge what I think I'm going to hear. Did I ever get blown away? So Dan was born into, I say, an unfortunate family. Father was a drug addict, mother was an alcoholic. He had an older brother, 2 years older, and the father had a son who was like in his 20s from a previous engagement relationship, right? Uh, One day, the son decides, he's a drug addict as well. I've got no more use for my dad. Bang, he's gone. So the father's now gone. The son, of course, is in jail.
Wait,
It didn't take long for
father?
what's that?
Did he shot? He killed
Yeah,
his.
he shot him. He shot and killed his father. Right. So now there's Dan, his brother, 2 years older. Dan is 5. Right. His older brother's 7, and the alcoholic mother. Family services didn't take long for them to show up. They take away the 2 boys,
Mhm.
and they put him into a foster family where it got worse. Uh, he said the man wasn't too bad, but he called the woman an absolute witch, a nightmare. He said they had 7 foster children. They could not have take care of 7 foster children. All she wanted was the money. And he said, I spent 5 years trying to stay away from him as much as I could.
Mm,
Well, when he was 10, he's in grade 4, reading at a grade 1 level.
mm.
Okay. These 2 angels come along, an older couple, and they adopt Dan and his brother.
How about that?
By the end of that school year, Dan is not reading at grade 1 level anymore. He's reading at a grade 6 level.
Okay.
His mother was a teacher. So they, for high school, moved down to Florida where they enrolled Dan in kind of a preppy school, not really Dan's thing, right? But uh, this chemistry teacher sees a lot of potential in Dan, and on Dan's behalf, he goes out and gets Dan a full ride scholarship. Dan, star athlete, 4.0 student, classical pianist.
You just never know.
Now, when Dan is 10 at this foster home, right? Society knows exactly where Dan is going, doesn't it? They
Right?
know where he's
He's
going. Of
going.
course they know.
He going.
It's a done deal.
That's it.
Nope, not quite. And so I got blown away by this 29-year-old man with this story that I had, again, I prejudged what I thought I was going to hear. I never made that mistake again, let me tell you.
Just give her a say. I bet you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
something right
You know,
there. And you just never know who
you never know.
path you're gonna cross, who needs you, who sees you.
Yeah,
Being all of my crazy talking antics and everything, I'd just be all off the cuff. I would jump up on the table. I had a 4-foot vertical leap from the floor to the middle of the pool table at school, or I was cutting up something fierce.
yeah.
And you never know who's watching
You never know who's watching.
you. You never know who's
Uh,
listening
i- i-
to you.
If you got time, I got two more. Can I do two
We got
more?
this is I look. This is
Okay, okay.
don't
So,
don't make me come up there and bite you in the
w-
forehead.
yeah, okay, okay.
We had
So
time.
I'm in Jackson, Mississippi, and of course I go to the Civil Rights Museum, and I walk in and I tell the docent who I am, what I'm doing, and so forth. He said, "Oh, you've got to talk to this guy down there. He's just about to start speaking." It was Hezekiah Watkins.
How about that?
Yeah, do you know the name?
No, I don't know who
Oh,
Hezekiah Walker is.
okay.
Of course,
He
I
was.
know who Hezekiah Walker. He is one of the most prominent
Yep.
clergy in our community. Oh yeah, we know about Hezekiah Walker.
Yeah, Hezekiah Watkins. Watkins, right? Yeah. So he was a freedom rider, basically, and so forth. He got arrested at age 14 in Jackson, Mississippi, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong skin color, right? And he was tossed into a very notorious prison. It took a call from JFK to the governor of Mississippi to get him out. So I got to meet him and interview him. I saw him not too long ago and gave him I spoke a copy of the book that he's in, so forth. But I actually got to meet a freedom rider. I mean, can you believe that? Blow me away.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I kind of
yeah,
can. And when I met these men, I was like, okay, well, I gotta be around these old men. These old people smell funny. Oh my God. And later in life, well, I didn't realize the magnitude of the presence of the people that I was in. And
yeah,
where we were this is when we were I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and we were looking to elect the first African American mayor of a metropolitan city in Cleveland, Ohio.
mhm,
Okay, Jesse Jackson came, Hezekiah Watkins, they was there, John Lewis was there,
yeah, yeah,
Jesse Jackson was there, Dr. King was there, and I was like, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, and we're showing them around every place that we're going, and they gave us such a. I couldn't even vote. I could not even vote. I was
oh,
16. Couldn't even
yeah,
vote.
yeah,
We had to participate in the political process. If you have no voice, you have no choice. So you have a voice, you have a choice. That's what I grew up on. And so as I get older, I'm like, I was sitting in the press. I sat right next to Jesse Jackson. And, and I'm like, that's why you got to know your history. It is imperative, no matter how bad, how ugly, how big, know your history, know where
yeah,
you come from. I knew why he sat down. I knew why Miss Rosa Parks didn't get up to go into the back.
mm,
But I knew it, and I get to stand here on their shoulders, on their
yeah,
shoulders.
absolutely.
I respect my ancestors. I even respect the crazy ancestors we had, because we all got
Yeah.
in the family. But you have to be able to know what your purpose is. When did you know for yourself, Greg, that this was what you were supposed to do? Not what you thought you were supposed to do, but that you knew that this was what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, so as I said, as a young man, I had a plan, and that plan was to make a lot of money really quick and become a philanthropist. And so I was in the investment banking business, so I was in the right business, become wealthy, right? And I decided to go to Chicago to trade in the futures exchanges, where if you succeed, I mean, it can be amazing and so forth. And the plan was to get to a certain degree of wealth had I succeeded as a trader, which I did not, and to become a philanthropist. And that's all I want to do in my life. Now, that plan did not work out. So I
She
took up software development. I took up software development, made a nice career out of it, retired, as I said, from the pharma business with a nice position at Pfizer. And so life worked out for me, right? But that one thing I really wanted to do where I could make a difference in other people's lives in some way, that was unfulfilled. And so that's where this whole idea about writing people's stories and so forth, and 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 seeing people's reaction to telling their story. This is where I find my purpose. I get a chance to give in a very, very different way than that young man thought he was going to give.
So what is your
But
walk up? What is your walk up conversation when you bump into the people, walk up to them? What is your opening line as in
uh,
get them to open
sure.
up to you?
Yep. I tell them my name. I tell them where I'm from. I live in Illinois and I am writing a book
Mhm.
and I am interviewing people about their lives. And I usually have McAdams' book with me for credibility. I mean, this is a professor at Northwestern, right? The stories we live by. See this protocol? I'm using this guy's, I'm not making it up and so forth. So I would have his book with me. And of course, not everybody responded, of course, but to those who did, it turned out pretty interesting, obviously. But yeah, I would tell people I just want to hear your story, and that's what McAdams says in his book. He says his very first paragraph is, "I'm just here to listen. I just want to hear your story." And he's got these great 22 questions that I use to get people's story. And like I say, I point to him because I don't want people, some Yahoo off the street, me, is making stuff up. It's actually coming from a well-known professor who's world-renowned in this field of narrative psychology, right? So I got that to back me up, if you will. And so that's how I kind of sold myself, if you will, to try to get people to tell me the story.
Are you self published?
Story Merchant Books in Los Angeles. So
Don't
I
know.
gave a bunch.
Said I know exact Ken is
You
that was
know, Ken.
Ken. No, I
Uh,
I know Ken actually. He's been here.
yeah, yeah, yep, yep. So here I am in Los Angeles giving a speech at the Rotary Club, right? And his wife, Kyoko, is giving a speech as well. She goes. I went first, I think, actually. And after the meeting, Ken comes up to me and says, "Greg," hands me his card. When you're ready with that book, give me a call. I find this kind of interesting. And so I kept Ken in the loop, and that was on my second journey. That was my Western journey. I did East, West, South, and Great Plains, right? 4 journeys. And so that's how I met Ken, and his company is my publisher.
And he knows good
Publishing.
talent. He really knows good talent.
Oh, he does, of course, yeah,
He's just such a lovely man. I truly,
yeah.
truly adore him.
So I haven't met him yet, but I will be out. I will be out in Los Angeles,
Do I do I
late
do I hear a
late May.
lunch or dinner coming on? Do I hear see a date coming up for you and
Um,
Ken and a few other people, Nicole and Devin, the people from the Blaine
yeah,
group?
yeah, yeah. I'm going to be in Los Angeles for 4 nights. I've already got the dates planned. I just don't know them off the top of my head. Be sometime in May though,
Oh,
late May, I believe. By the time I get to LA, obviously going to get to see Devin and Ken and a few other people, and so forth.
myself included. So
Okay, it's a date.
that you see what I do? You see how This is just not for thus and so. This is for me, mother love. I tell people this all the time. I don't know everybody. I know everybody else.
There you go.
I don't know everything. I know everything else, and I know the people that I'm supposed to know. To the people, and I want to just take this pause to thank the Blaine Group and Adam and Devin and the
Yeah,
whole team because
yeah.
they stayed with me. We had these horrible fires out here, and I
I know.
still scratchy. But from January 7th till like the end of February, I literally could not talk. I got
Wow.
notes all over my house, in my desk, in my bathroom, because my voice, the soot and smoke, it felt like it settled on my vocal cords. And I went to the doctor, and I said, "Well, what can I do?" She said, "Stop talking." I was like, "You do know I'm a talk show host, right?" She said, "Well, you got to stop talking if you want to continue to be a talk show host." And I had to rest my vocal cord.
Oh wow.
And to see all of this destruction and devastation, it's good to have people like you, Devin, and Ken, all of the wonderful people have continued to around me to keep me uplifted. I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. Thank you so much. Because they could have just kicked me to the curb. Hell, I would have kicked me to the curb. So I'd have kept my mouth shut. So now, as you're doing this, so you're doing this tour. What's it going to be like? What's going to be? What's the next book coming up? Because you can do a whole series of this.
Yeah, yeah. So people have asked me if I was going to do some sort of follow up, but I have decided I'm moving to Portugal in October,
Mhm.
and it's just something that's been on my mind for a number of years now. Great weather. I just got back from Portugal for Christmas and New Year's. My daughter came down from France. We spent almost 3 weeks there and looking at real estate and so on and so forth. So I'm moving to Portugal, but I had a phone call the last summer from one of the people I interviewed in West Virginia.
Mhm.
And he's one of the 5 people, by the way, whose story is not in the book, but very interesting story. He said, Greg, I'm going to go to Ukraine and volunteer. You need to go and tell those people stories. And I thought when I saw the email, yeah, right. And
I'm
then about and then about 2 days later, it was like, yeah, right. So I definitely plan on going to Ukraine in the spring of 26. Hopefully things will have subsided. I hope. Um, it's going to be a written narrative book. It's going to be a photo book as well. So it's going to be picture and photo, or narrative and photo. And I've already got a wonderful photographer who I went to high school with. Hadn't talked to her in 50 years. She's out in British Columbia. And so I called her up one day and I said, Hey, Mary, it's Greg Leeson calling from Illinois. How would you like to go to Ukraine with me?
oh that
Stunned, son.
I was like,
Stunned silence. So I remember silence, right? And so I explained to her, I said, Mary,
you
I
can't even get crickets off of that one. That's nothing comes out. Hey, you want to go to Ukraine with me?
well, that's exactly how I asked her, right? And but I've seen her photos online. She is a remarkable photographer of people all over the world, right? And after I talked to her for a bit, she said, Yeah, let's do that, Greg. So she's on board,
Crazy.
provided
Found another crazy person. Come on, let's go.
I know another crazy person, right? The
And
two
this
of us.
crazy person come back and talk to about it.
So, assuming things are better in Ukraine, I'm looking at 3 months in Ukraine to do a narrative picture book, and I also want to do a documentary. And so I'm going to start reaching out to foundations and so forth about the project. Now that I actually have a book, which is equals credibility, right? You got it. It's credibility. I've been interviewed with people like you and so forth. Credibility. I think I might be able to sell that to some foundation or a media group or whatever.
Listen,
I'm thinking.
I need to just get this out of your head. See,
Yeah.
you trying to do your own sinning right here. Remember Quick Straw McGraw the cartoon? You know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
you got to stop doing some of that sinning you doing.
It's been,
This is not about a if. This is not about a maybe. This is about not about a I think. This is what you are going to do.
yeah. Yeah.
And
There
some
you go.
do maybe if well I hope no you want hope to happen.
Yeah.
You make the hope happen.
Yeah.
And that's what you and all the time the assignments could seem extremely overwhelming. And you're
Yeah.
like, wait, me? Why would you put this idea in my head? And I'm gonna
Yeah.
do the same thing they
Yeah.
told me. Well, why not you?
Yep. Why not?
And then we don't have a snappy comeback because you didn't have a snappy comeback for the why not me, did you?
Yeah. Well,
You have
I guess I was trying to be nice, but that is the way I think. And when I went on the road for my first trip, okay, I left May 1, 2022, on my very first trip to meet people, right? By the way, May 1, 2022, I turned 65 that day. Not a coincidence that I start this whole project the day I turned 65, right? I also rented my home for 13 months because I did not want a fallback plan.
mhm.
I did not want to say, oh, maybe not. And so, yeah, so I did that on purpose. So I had to do this. So I spent almost 13 months or 13-month period on the road because I had no place to live other than my ex-wife's place from
Okay,
time to time.
now how cool is your ex-wife? Because and you even how long were you guys married for?
24 years.
24 years.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's like a grown child age, in college age, 24.
Yeah, 24 years.
Okay, and not to get all up in your Kool-Aid, but what wore out? Something had to wear out.
We had
What was
so they say money is a cause of two-thirds of divorces, and we had just very different approaches to money.
mm,
Very, very, very different. And I think it wore down after a period of time. But here's the thing: we both, you know, let's say we have a good relationship in our divorce. People are kind of amazed at it and so forth. And we both have the same philosophy: life is too short.
it's way too short.
You
And
know, yep, yep.
let's see,
So why bother?
that's something
And
people don't sit down before they get intimately involved. There
yeah,
are no conversations about what it is you want, what it is they want.
yeah,
What you bring
yeah,
to the table to make that whole,
yeah,
you bring it to the table of this marriage. And a lot of
yeah,
people come to the table and they haven't had these conversations. You know,
yeah, yeah,
they want to keep everything nice and pretty and light.
yeah.
I knew my husband was the one for me because he wasn't scared of my family. And every
Ah, wow.
friend I ever had, every man friend I ever had, that would be my mark. I'm gonna take you to meet my family. Now, if you could get with them and get through this, you're gonna be all right with me.
Yeah.
We'll celebrate our 50 something or other. I don't know what it is.
Ah,
It's been a long time.
congratulations.
And thank you very much. He gonna get into heaven for this. Me, I'm gonna have to sit at the mercy seat and be doing a lot of explaining to Saint Peter
Yeah.
and for them to let me in the door. Even if we go together, he gonna be the first one. I'm like, okay,
Oh, really?
I've been trying.
Okay.
I've been trying to fix it. I've been not trying. I work to
You
fix
are.
that we're okay. And that's a lot of stuff because this takes work. This is not an
Yeah.
easy thing to live with somebody else, and especially
No.
you adults. And especially that's the one thing I told my husband. I said we will never argue over money. We'll
Yeah.
never argue.
Yeah.
I've had a job ever since I was 14 years old, so I don't look to you to be financially responsible for me. I can take care of myself. Let's bring this to the table together. And people still wait for him to leave me. This is what's funny.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna stay with that crazy woman for too long. They be like, y'all still together?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. And then in Hollywood, we do the red carpet. They're like, you got the same husband. I'm like, what do you mean? I got the same husband. When I'm supposed to interchange him out here, then I found out
Yeah.
do a lot of interchanging of the husbands. And I'm like the sister that married to the brother-in-law, got 3 kids with the other brother. I'm like, oh, see, that's too much. That's too much because it takes a lot of work to keep a
Yeah.
relationship strong, and sometimes it just wears out.
It did a bit, I suppose, but I wouldn't have changed anything
Right.
because it was her idea to go to China to adopt. I wouldn't be a father of my daughter if it wasn't for my wife, right? So I count my blessings in that sense, of course.
And the fact that you all are still friends, that is
Yep,
so important. And that's
it
what
is.
that's what you do. You marry you and I give advice to people who want to get married, who are married, who want to get divorced, who want to stay married. I talk to them a lot. For whatever reason, they think that I got the magic keys because I got the same
Ah,
husband. And I'm like, oh, and then this is the one that gets me because he married me when I wore a size 22 dress. And you hear women
okay.
like that's a heap. The lady said, "You a heap of woman, mother love. It's a heap of you." Every you hear women say, "Well, I'll wait till I lose 50 pounds to get married." I'm like, "Do you really think he worried about 50 pounds if he wanted to marry you? Shut up. You sound like a crazy person." And everybody says he's actually going to marry her. Most people thought we were married anyway, and I know the work that it takes. So, and let me ask you this: would you ever remarry?
Me? So when we got when we got divorced, my daughter was kind of young, and she was only I guess 7 at the time, and so we had a good relationship how we spent time with and so forth. But I knew that I was going to be the one who was going to have to be financially there the entire time, and so I simply just did not date. I did not want to divide myself up that way, and so that was the decision I made.
You need to come to my workshop and give some man classes,
You think
because
so?
I know so. I know so. Men, especially successful men, well, all men should hear your extraordinary story because that's one. And people get so bitter after they break up and they split up, and you know, uh, and,
No,
you know that it takes two.
not worth it.
Eh, Life
not worth it.
with your wife
But
living,
but
it's too short.
but I got to tell you this. So, say Jennifer's about 7. When she's 16, 16 and a half, I guess, she gets her driver's license, beginners or permanent, whatever it is, that. And of course, you always have to be in the car with them.
Mhm.
And I remember when she got her regular driver's license, she was over her mother's place and she came over to my place that night for dinner. And after dinner, she said, I'm going to go to the store and get something. And so I, of course, started walking out to lunch with her and realized, no, she's going to drive off by herself. The next day, I signed up on Match.com.
Oh, so
That next day.
she wasn't waiting on your life. She was doing her life. You're like, oh,
And I figured it's time for me to do mine. And so I started dating after that, but never really found anyone that long term. But
okay.
so
This,
will I
this,
marry again? I
this.
mean, I'm going to be in Portugal. I don't know. Maybe I'll meet a nice Portuguese woman. Who
So,
knows?
what is your attraction to Portugal?
Uh, so I've been thinking about this for a number of years of where I might want to retire. Obviously, weather, right? And I looked at different parts of the world, Central America, South America, Asia, and so forth. But the only place that really interested me was Europe. And I've been to Europe many times. And by the way, my ex-wife allowed me to travel with my daughter every summer to Europe. By the time she was 17, she'd been to like 22 countries in the world and so forth. So my daughter's been traveled. So I've traveled a lot, and I want to see even more of Europe. And so I went home base.
Mhm.
And every time I looked at the best countries to relocate to for retirement, Portugal was always one of the best. The weather, it's got great food and so on and so forth, right? Um,
And
and
the
so I made that decision to go to Portugal. And as it turns out, they've got this great program for retirees. It's called a D7 visa, but it's all about passive income. So my daughter, who grew up in the United States, went to university in Canada and France, she decided at some age, I want to make my long-term life in Europe. That was her decision, right? Just something she wanted to do. She'd been all over Europe, of course, with me. But so I said, okay. And after I started talking to the agent who's helped me relocate, he mentioned this word. He said, rental income qualifies for passive income. I said, oh, so a few months ago, I gave my daughter my home. I don't own it anymore. She owns my home, and she is renting it out to a Chicago Bear, actually, here in Illinois. And her rental income qualifies her for the exact same visa that I'm getting. So we're each getting our own D7 visas, but she qualifies for that. After five, and she's allowed to work under this visa too. That's the other important
in
thing.
Portugal.
Yes, she's allowed to work in under that visa.
Mhm.
And after 5 years, if she so chooses, she can get a Portuguese passport, which means she could go anywhere in Europe if she wants to do that after 5 years. So this is a long-term thing that she's talked about for a number of years. I wanted to live in Europe, and this is how it's going to make it happen. And it just so happened to coincide with my retirement plans.
See, excuse me. See, this is what happens sometimes
Yeah,
with my voice. Oh, excuse me.
no worries.
I gotta hack that hairball up. And uh, so this is where you're gonna retire in Portugal. Now, have you selected a city?
Yes, so we were over there at Christmas and New Year's, and my ex-wife went with me and her sister, so there were four of us, and did Airbnbs everywhere. And so we went to Lisbon, of course, the main city, and then we went to the south, the Algarve, it's called, and it's a lot of tourists or expats down there, right? It's right on the Mediterranean, a little bit warmer, these smaller towns and so forth. And we went down there for 4 nights. And I decided when I got back, I think I really do want to live in Lisbon. And so I've got a real estate agent. She showed us two places in Lisbon, which my daughter and I both liked a lot, apartment. And then she showed us two places about a half an hour outside of Lisbon. And we decided, both of us, we want to be right in the city in Lisbon. And so that's the plan. So we'll have a place on August 1, and I'll sign for August 1 contract. And then literally the following week, we'll be in Washington applying for our visas.
Well, Congratulations to you. Thank you for so much for taking time out of your very busy day to chat with us. And
Well, thank you.
it's my pleasure. Thank you to the Blaine Group. And I just want you safe travels, Mr. Greg Leeson. And remember this,
Thank you.
folks, no matter how big or tall, short or small, thick or thin, it matters not what skin you're in. Everybody needs some other love now and then, huh? Peace, babies. Know that we love you. But and listen, send me something for that. I want an invitation to the going away party, something out your kitchen, and a book. Sound
Absolutely. And everybody's getting invited to Portugal. You will too. And may I mention my website just before we go?
absolutely.
Okay. My website is gregoryleesonbooks.com. And Leeson is Leeson. gregoryleesonbooks.com.
And his book is Ordinary People Living Extraordinary Lives. And you are